Jenny BLALOCK was a private pilot who shared her aviation journey on her YouTube channel, TN Flygirl. And on December 7th, 2023, she was flying with her father when she crashed, killing them both. And in this video, I'm going to share her story with you, but more importantly, we're going to talk about the one thing that no one is saying about her death. I'm Hoover, and welcome to your Pilot Debrief. I have to warn you that this is a very tragic story, and I first want to offer my condolences to the family and friends of Jenny and her father as they deal with this terrible tragedy. Now, despite what you might think of Jenny, especially after what I'm about to share, just remember that a family lost a father and a daughter. The other thing that's important to keep in mind is that the NTSB investigation is still in the very early stages, and it will probably be another year or two before we see the final report, but for now, here's what we know. Jenny BLALOCK was born on July 8, 1979 and graduated from the University of Tennessee with a bachelor's degree in human resources. She was a real go-getter and the owner and founder of two companies, Lux Home & Designs, which designs and builds custom houses, and Plantation Reclaimed, specializing in antique reclaimed wood flooring. It seemed that when Jenny wanted to do something, she just went out and got it done. And at some point, she decided she wanted to become a pilot and she started documenting her journey on Instagram and YouTube. Her YouTube channel was TN Flygirl, and as of today, every video that she made about flying on her channel has been removed. And my hope is that the NTSB is able to obtain those from the family because from what I saw and what I'm going to share with you, they're definitely going to help in the investigation process. Meanwhile, over on Instagram, Jenny went by the username 865flygirl, and there are still some of her videos on that platform, but the content is nothing like the detail that you could have found on her YouTube channel. When Jenny first started learning to fly, she purchased a 1969 Piper Cherokee in early September of 2021, and here's a picture of that aircraft. We know from her Instagram that her third solo flight was on September 26, 2021. However, it was almost 8 months later before she passed her private pilot check ride on May 15, 2022. And when you look at her Instagram post celebrating this accomplishment, she sounds just like anybody else that has worked extremely hard to become a pilot. It takes a lot of work and dedication, but the real question for the NTSB to consider is, was she truly ready to be a pilot? Just because you can pass a check ride doesn't necessarily mean that being a pilot is the right thing for you to do. What's interesting to me is that it looks like it was just 2 months after passing her check ride that she decided to go out and buy a new airplane. On July 14, 2022, she posted, "So today I did a thing. Goodbye to my Piper, hello to my Beechcraft family." The aircraft she purchased was a 1965 Beech 35 C-33 Debonair. I'm not sure why she did this, because the Piper Cherokee that she used for all of her training is a good aircraft for a new pilot. And when you finally get done with training and you get your license, it's never a bad idea to just keep flying what you flew in training, at least for a little bit, so that way you can build up some hours and become more comfortable flying by yourself. Now, she probably had less than 100 hours when she bought her Beechcraft Debonair, but this wasn't the worst mistake that she made, as would become evident from the videos she uploaded to social media over the next year and a half. I know that the one thing that most people focused on in her videos was her use of the autopilot in her Beechcraft, but I want to show you some other clips because I think they're important to understanding not only why she crashed, but if you pay close attention, then you might be able to spot the one thing that no one else is saying about her crash. In this clip, she's taken off from runway 04 at Rockwood Municipal Airport, and she's going to fly to Knoxville Downtown Island Airport. This is the image of the ADSB data from the flight, and even though it's spotty in a few parts, this is where it starts right after she gets airborne, and you can see that as soon as she starts that turn to the east, she turns too far and ends up heading to the southwest. Now watch what happens next and listen to what she says.
On the wrong way. In the scenic tour. I am. Back around here.
At least she realized they're going the wrong direction, so she started to turn back to the left, but she's going to turn too far again and end up heading to the northeast. Now you can see that on the ADSB data right here, but also if you look closely in the video, you can see the airfield and the image off their left side. So all she needs to do is turn about 45 degrees to the right and she'd be heading in the right direction, but instead she decided to try the autopilot and watch what happens.
On navigation. See where it takes us.
Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of people like to use the autopilot, and it's definitely very helpful to use when you're flying in the weather, assuming that you know how to use it. But you should be able to demonstrate an ability to fly the aircraft without the autopilot before you start using it. And if you are using an autopilot, then there should be no doubt in your mind where it's going to take you when you turn it on. In full disclosure, it's my understanding that she did have some trouble with her autopilot in the early stages of using it and had to get it fixed. But the bottom line is that so far on this flight, instead of just looking outside and flying visually or flying a specific heading, she's very focused on the technology and fiddling around with her iPad. And the other thing I want to point out is that at least she and her dad are both wearing their restraints. I've debriefed too many mishaps where the pilot and others weren't wearing any restraints, or they were only wearing the lap belt, so at least she's got that part right. However, as you can see from the ADS-B data, her autopilot takes her in this turn to the right, and at some point she doesn't like what it's doing and she doesn't know where it's taking her, so she turns it off. But for some unknown reason, she keeps her right turn going until she's pointed back to the northwest, almost the exact opposite of where she wanted to go. Neither of them talk about the fact that they're literally almost flying over the runway that they just took off from. They're not clearing for traffic, and they haven't made any radio calls to let anyone else know that they haven't departed to the east like they said they're going to do. I'm not going to show you the rest of the video because it's just extremely frustrating to watch, and you can see what happens just by looking at the data as they end up doing a 360-degree turn to the west of the field, and then they fly north and then head back to the southwest before doing another 360-degree turn and then eventually heading off in the right direction. Keep in mind that this flight was in January of 2023, so that's almost 8 months after she got her private pilot certificate. She had done several flights during that time frame, so it's just really crazy to watch this unfold during this flight because it takes a lot of work to get disoriented and lost for almost 15 minutes while you're still within visual range of the runway you just departed from. But honestly, this isn't even the worst part of the video, as I've decided to save that for the end. I want to pause for a moment though, because I want to make it clear that I'm not sharing her video to try to ridicule or shame her. That's not the point of a debrief. We want to take a hard look at the factors that contribute to a mishap, even if that means being critical of others and the mistakes that they make. Now, you can apply the pilot debrief to any industry because it's about being brutally honest in order to do better the next time, or in this case, hopefully to prevent another mishap. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about her crash, but there's a few important things that I want to point out, especially when it comes to Jenny's videos and the one thing that no one is saying about this crash. We know that from the preliminary report from the NTSB that she was flying from Knoxville, Tennessee to Benton, Arkansas, and it was a VFR flight. She had requested VFR flight following, which is a service that air traffic control can provide, time and workload permitting, to provide VFR pilots with advisories that can help them during their flight. Now, in this case, the controller did a really good job by recognizing and telling Jenny that she was left of the course that she should have been on, and she responded saying that she was correcting. Her altitude fluctuated quite a bit during the moments leading up to the crash, and her inability to hold a steady altitude really isn't a surprise because this was something that she struggled with, as you could see in several of the videos that she shared on YouTube. Now, from the early analysis of the ADS-B data and using some of those previous videos as evidence, it seems likely that she simply failed to understand how to use the autopilot, and it's possible that she was using the trim too much to try to control the aircraft altitude and ended up putting the aircraft in a situation with too much nose-down trim, and eventually she ended up in a descent of almost 12,000 feet per minute, going a maximum of 228 knots and couldn't recover. When it comes to Jenny BLALOCK, the one thing that no one has said about the tragic death of her and her father is that Jenny had everything that she needed to accomplish a pilot debrief and save her own life. She recorded everything, which let me be clear in saying that pilots need to focus on flying the aircraft, not on trying to set up their iPhone or their GoPros so they can record a video for social media. However, in her case, she likely had videos of every single flight that she ever did, and it seems that no one ever taught her how to do a pilot debrief. And I told you that I was saving the worst part for the end, and this is a clip from her flight that I shared with you earlier. Listen to what she says.
I'm going to turn around again. I turned this off accidentally. I don't know how to turn it back on.
Hey guys, I laughed so hard over seeing myself accidentally turn off the 430 and not knowing how to turn it back on. I've never had that happen before. I didn't even know, obviously, how to turn it back on. I've never turned it off. So, anyway, I have died laughing at myself over that and my reaction to it.
That was the scariest part of her entire video. She's debriefing herself for YouTube and not debriefing herself on how to be a safer and better pilot. Now she's talking about how she's laughing at herself for not knowing how to turn on the autopilot and not knowing how to use it, but she doesn't make any mention of the fact that she got lost on takeoff on a clear VFR day going between two airports that she was familiar with. We have to do better than this. You owe it to yourself, and if you're an instructor or anyone in a supervisory role for that matter, you have to be honest with yourself, and you have to be critical of yourself, and sometimes you have to be critical of others, no matter how hard it might be, to sit down and do a real debrief if you really want to make a difference and save lives. Now, I hope that you found this debrief to be helpful, and I hope that Jenny's family can at least take some comfort in knowing that the death of her and her father just might save a lot of lives. If you learned something from this debrief, be sure to check out another one on the channel, and I'll see you next time.